Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Good morning, dear officials, the organizers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to see you here. It's maybe the condensate of people who are interested in re-refining in Russia and the neighboring countries. I was asked to give you a little bit an overview about the development of waste regeneration in Europe and what are the lessons that we can learn for that and probably transfer it to Russia. So, yesterday we had summer in Moscow. Today we have re-refining day. I hope it's not a bad signal, but I'm very happy that we're here. Let's get started. Yeah, I will, in my speech, just inform you about the G.I.R. itself, give you some facts about the European regeneration, have a small view on technology and products, looking at the environmental impact, and then give you an overlook about the development of the legislation we had in Europe with some examples, ending in why regeneration, why it makes sense, and some suggestions to your market. I guess most of you or some of you know G.I.R. G.I.R. is a section within the UEL. The UEL is the Independent Lubricant Association. Approximately 1/3 of the lubricant market in Europe is organized within the UEL. And the re-refining section has its own statutes, its own president, and is self-standing, responsible for promoting re-refining, especially waste oil collection and regeneration, to support the technical development of waste oil regeneration in Europe, to support the priority of regeneration over indirect or direct burning. G.I.R. represents almost the industry within Europe, including Bulgaria, Denmark, Germany, Greece, Italy, Portugal, Romania, Spain, and UK. And we are open also to members from Russia or to members from other countries which can join us as observers and participate in our different meetings where we can put and group the industry more together. One point is very important. We have been into a very deep legislation process within the last year, and what we discovered that we have a lot of confusion about wording in our industry. So if we talk about used oil, or in US, we talk about UMO, used motor oil, or ULO, used lubricating oil, or waste oil. So the definition in Europe is by law, and is waste oil. Therefore, I try to stay with waste oil, but used oil is so common that, of course, it is used many times. What used oil is, you all know. I don't have to give you more explanation. Same stands for regeneration. So regeneration is explicitly saying that only the process of converting waste oil to base oil whilst removing the oxidants and the remaining parts which are not desired from the waste oil, this is regeneration. And when we talk about re-refining, it should be the same. So re-refining never includes any production to fuels. Here you can see that in Europe we don't have only 1, 2, 3 plants. We have not had a lot new plants in the last years, but you see all over Europe is covered within a distance of less than 1,000 kilometers. You will find regeneration plant. We do have as well new projects. There's one announced in UK, another one in Czech Republic. We have not seen groundbreaking yet, but we hope that our family is growing. The color of the different spots shows a bit of view to the technology. Yellow is regeneration to base oil. We could have black spots as well, and many. Those are small installations which don't do regeneration, but which consume used oil to produce fuel, mainly for the bunker market. But this is not shown here, and they are not members of G.I.R. The orange points show you advanced technologies such as hydrogenation or solvent extraction. So you can see that quite a lot of plants have converted already their installations to modern technologies. And we have Pure Loop producing Group 3 in Germany. If we look at figures, figures is always very, very important. And we'll come back to that later, why figures are so important for the legislative process. And to move things, you have to collect data and you have to know data. These data refer to 2014, but don't worry, they're almost the same for 2016 and 17. The total lubricant consumption in Europe is 4.3 million tons. The numbers for Russia, depending on the source, are probably between 1.3 million tons. What is from a professional from our industry, Fuchs, is thinking it's 1.3, but I have read also numbers of 1.5, 1.6. And so it's roughly 1/3, let's say, of the European market. So Russia is a very large lubricant market. And if you look at our industry, then it is important how much base oil is containing in these 4.3 million tons. It is roughly 3.8 million tons base oils. And these base oils, they can be produced by virgin producers or by regeneration. You know, the total lubricant consumption is the baseline, and different lubricants have different rates of recovery of waste oil. So automotive oils, for example, is 65% of the lubricant is then waste oil. Bicycle oil, two-stroke oil, saw chain oil ends up at 0. Hydraulic oil maybe end up in 90%. So in average, it's 46%. This is a number which is scientifically proven. There's also a new study about that. So the collectible waste oil is around 46%, nearly 2 million tons. But not all of the waste oil is collected. What is collected is 1.8 million tons, so 12%. We don't know. It may be used directly in wherever. So there's a pressure for legislation and a pressure for the industry to look where these 12% are. Nobody wants that used oil is spoiling the environment or is not accounted. Out of those 1.739 millions, 0.95, so 1 million tons, is directly routed to regeneration. In the cake, you can see 735, that's the waste oil within the countries, which is recycled within the EU, within the member states, so in Germany, regenerated in Germany, but some member states, they export it. For example, Luxembourg is too small, so they send all their waste oil to Germany. And this is another green bar, and in total, it sums up to 1 million tons. And out of these 1 million tons, 0.6 million tons are produced to base oil. What means it's 16% of the market. What is quite a good number if you see how much in other industries is is a part of secondary material, so 16% we have already achieved, and we're sure we can double that if we have the right legislation, the right people, the right investments, and if the movement is going on. Of course, in Europe, in the early 30s, started regeneration industry to support the war machine with lubricants. And the industry suffered that regenerated waste oil was always cheap, was second best, it was a little bit stinky, a dark color, and it was simply not an easy industry, and problems with PCB and chlorine, and at the end, of course, also the polyaromatic content was always an issue. But if you use proper technologies such as hydrogenation or solvent extraction, you can achieve high-quality products, and the industry today shows that they are within the most advanced technically comparable to virgin industry. So that's a little bit the history. So we had a period in the 70s where thin film evaporation was introduced, very, very important to get rid of the sulfuric acid treatment, and that's almost not existing anymore in Europe. And in 2000, it began that the companies have invested heavily in modern technologies all around Europe. Recently, we have Group 3, and what will be the next? We are looking for the high-end components such as polyolefins. Can we recover them, and can we recycle them separately? Quick look to the technologies. Of course, the new technologies give you all the advantages in having a high yield, a good quality, a zero waste production, a good quality of the byproducts, considerable reduction of the PNAs, and sulfur reduction, what is very important also here. In Russia, you have Euro 5 now, and going to Euro 6 in the future. So sulfur is, of course, an issue, and environmental friendly processes. I don't want to stay too much with technology now. I know that some will present special technologies later. Important is, of course, the outcome of all the technologies. You know the API classification, which is from Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, 5. So modern re-refining technologies, of course, can compete with virgin base oils, and you can see that Group 2 is almost achievable with re-refining, regeneration. What is very important, that it's not a low-class product, it's a product which has a market and has a large market in the competition to the virgin industry. It's not only the API classification. And of course, it's not only the color. If you look some small installations around the world, they show me their products and say, Christian, look at that color, it's so nice. But they forget that the other properties are very important. Heavy metals and all the properties which make the base oil as basis for a good lubricant. If you want to use it in motor oils, everybody knows you need a good crankcase stability, you need a good NOAC, the volatility, you have to have a sharp cut that you can use it for different applications. And this is very, very important for regeneration, that you choose the right technology and you look at the markets which are interesting for you. Maybe you go only for a commodity product such as hydraulic oil. But maybe you find it interesting also to participate in 5W oils in the market, which is growing very much and has new segments, and or you go into specialties, base oil used as a fluid in the industry, in the chemical industry. So there are some niches, so therefore it's very important which technology you are using. That depends also, of course, what used oil is available. Is it a big mixture? Can you segregate some of the used oil? So it's the whole chain. You need to have a knowledge of the whole chain, and at least, of course, you have to look in the future. What is coming? What is the demand in the future? How will the price gap develop in the future? What is your best estimate? If you see the base oil prices, how much Group 3 prices came down? Very, very interesting. So close to Group 1 prices. One aspect is extremely important. We had a lot of discussions, what is more environmentally friendly? Is it to burn waste oil or is it to recycle waste oil? For logic reasons, you would say, of course, it is more ecological to recycle or to regenerate the waste oil. But some studies said, okay, if you use the waste oil and you replace dirty coal, which has a low CO content and a high, so that you have a positive impact when you use the waste oil instead of using coal. So you have to weigh that. And some of the studies had not had a result was 100% in favor of regeneration. But we have commissioned a new study in 2016, and we have published that in 2017. And this study took into account all the modern technologies, took into account the real situation so that waste oil doesn't replace coal anymore. Waste oil is replacing fuels or base oils, and it's a very good result. And this result you can look at in the internet. There is a download of this study. The short version you can download directly. The longer version, you have just to register your name and mail address. It's important in the political and in the legislation process to really have a scientific, firm ground that you can ask for something to give priority to regeneration on a firm scientific basis so that everybody feels good. We don't want a greenwashing. We want to be real in our industry. In the bars, you can see that regeneration scores much better than virgin productions. It would take too long time to guide you through this study, so therefore I recommend to you to look at it in the internet. Having a view to the history of legislation, the first legislation in Europe was the directive of disposal of waste oils, and it was in 1975. It was the first European directive. It was quite nice. The main thing was priority is given to regeneration of used oil to base oil if there are no technical, economical, or organizational constraints. So in principle, priority. But in fact, everybody could have an excuse not to transpose the legislation into national law. So we had an area of countries who have transposed strongly and the others have not. But it was very, very important because it was an own legislation and everybody had to review this legislation, and it was a driver for national legislation. In 2008, we had the Waste Framework Directive, so the elder waste directive was removed and replaced by the Waste Framework Directive. For all kind of waste, there was set a waste hierarchy, and recycling, what in our case means the regeneration of waste oil to base oil, was higher ranked than treatment of waste oil to fuels or direct burning. And this was a rule what has to be transposed into national law. So it means that if you have waste oil, you have to send it first to regeneration. Did it work? Partially. Partially it worked. And in some countries, they had stronger legislations. Amazingly, the countries in the south, they have the better regulation, such as Greece or Italy or Spain or Portugal. If you look at Sweden or Finland or even Germany, maybe the oil lobby is stronger there. Now, this Waste Framework Directive has had to be revised, and since 2014, the Commission and the Parliament and the Council, they had lots of negotiations. That's concerning all the waste. And they have set some targets for some wastes, not for waste oil yet. That's the general new thing in this directive. But concerning waste oil, so this directive is already published, and it has last week adopted finally by the Parliament. That's just a formal act, and we expect very soon that it will be adopted by the Council, and then it is mandatory for the member states to transpose this directive within 2 years. In general, for waste oil, there are no major change as it is. But in the whole process, it was discussed if targets should be included in the law for waste oil. What means that? That means a target is something what you can measure. If you give priority, it is very difficult to measure. But if you have a target what says you have to collect 100%, you have to assure to collect 100% waste oil of the collectible waste oil. First, you need a calculation, how much can you collect? But there are some schemes. So if you have collected 100%, everybody agrees almost with this, how much of this waste oil must be regenerated? So the target, what they have to assess, is 85%. And this 85% essentially, including more collection, would double the availability of waste oil for our industry, ending up in probably 37% market share of the total base oil market. What is a very, very 35%. What is really strong, what we're re-refining, would be able to cover 1/3 of the European market. Very strong signal. And why did they couldn't agree on these targets? It was really 50-50. They couldn't agree on the targets yet because the basis of the figures was not solid and robust enough. Different countries have not delivered their figures, and so now the Commission is running to collect the figures and to advise the different member states how to collect the figures, that they can assess if a target of 85% or probably 80% is the right target for our industry. And a target would be very strong, a target you can measure. And if you don't fulfill the target, you get a fine. And the fine is not 50 euros a ton. It would be much, much more. So member states would be very keen to fulfill this. Of course, we have stress in other areas as well. You probably know REACH is the registration, evaluation, authorization of chemicals. So all the chemicals have to be registered. It's a long process. You can register as if you produce regenerated oils, every product has to be registered, not only the base oil, all your byproducts as well. You can also ask for an exemption of registration, but you need a file with exactly the same numbers as if you have wood registered. So it's the same. You have to prepare a dossier, which is very complicated, and you have to update it, and you have to participate. And if you are not in compliance with REACH, you cannot send any product in the European Union. And the screw REACH even more. It's bureaucratic, but you need a lot of data for your products. I always look at used oil quality, used oil to analyze the used oil, the waste oil. So you see sometimes this used oil still in the slide, what should be waste oil, but we understand each other. So it is very important that the used oil is analyzed. Higher volumes should be analyzed, of course, at the generator's site, not to pollute other oil if you collect it. And if it's collected and arrives at the collector, he definitely has to analyze at minimum, okay, flash point is for transportation, that's pretty easy. But if it contains PCB or chlorine, before he decides to deliver it to a waste oil regeneration plant. And of course, if the regeneration plants have produced their product, they have also to undergo an analysis. Why I focus on analysis as such is very important that our industry is reliable, that we have reliable data of our raw material and that we have reliable data of our products. Now I jump a little bit to the view. What is the view in Europe? What is the view politically? What is driving people to make new legislations? How is their feeling? What want they do to the society if they introduce new legislations? And it's very popular now to say, okay, we want to have a sustainability process, as a sustainability world, sustainability actions, and sustainability thinking. And the European Commission thinks that it will improve economic, social, and environmental dimensions. And it will be a driver for the European industry and a driver for economic growth. And it requires good governance to guideline this, and it is important to do that now. So come down from the clouds, come down to earth, and do things what you can transpose and also what you can people to do. I think this kind of spirit is very important, and you will now see why this spirit is important. Coming to reality, what helped our industry, I don't go into details, but of course in some countries there is a financial instrument to help regeneration. For example, in Italy, Spain, Portugal, Denmark, and Poland. So all the lubricant producers and importers have to pay a certain amount into a system of the lubricants, what they have brought into the market. And this system sometimes is very bureaucratic, consumes the half of the income. That's not the best way to do. More digitalization would help there. And then it is at the benefit for regeneration. It's not very easy to give you a recipe how to do this or to collect money from all the lubricant producers. That's probably not that difficult. But how much should it then be for regeneration? Of course, it should be an amount that regeneration is able to pay more to the generator, that the generator will deliver the waste oil to regeneration and not to burning. With examples in Europe, so in Germany we have no national, we have a priority only on the paper. In Germany, the regeneration industry has to survive against any wild storm and has to survive against, in the past it was the cement industry, today is the bunker industry. Well, we think we are doing quite well, but we are all sure that targets would help the industry a lot to improve. What is the situation in Italy? Smaller country, but very strong country in re-refining, very good collection of waste oil, and a high portion of regenerated base oils is a very strong priority. And there is an organization installed since more than 30 years and helped the industry to evolve. Some are in Europe, some are very jealous of this system and say this is a system which makes you a wonderful world in regeneration. It's partly true, and others say, no, we have to fight in the reality, in the economy of the markets, like in the US, where you have, aside California, also no incentive to do your business and simply to fight hard to achieve good results. UK is a little bit a desert, only one small regeneration unit, and you can see that it is almost nothing what is regenerated there. There is no priority for regeneration. There's a standard, PFO standard for processed fuels oils, so that you have, in the past you could almost distillate your waste oils and you name it product and you send it. So to name it a product today, you have to fulfill a certain standard. But it's not enough ground, so they have not done enough to build the ground for regeneration. A refinery is announced, but it has not yet materialized, and so you can see if the legislation is very weak, also the result is very weak. If you have good legislation, you will end up in such nice installations. Oops, okay. Like Viscoloop, Pure Globe, and Avista, and Cyclone in Greece. Why I show you these pictures? I show you these pictures because there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And if you look at the question in the very beginning of the conference, would you invest in regeneration? Would you invest in refining? You have to have a good base to do that first, but you have to be an entrepreneurial person or entrepreneurial company. There is not a real safeguard for the industry, nowhere in the world. But we know why we do our business. We know that we have new growing markets. We know that the high barrel price helps. We know that we have good technology. We have not to be shy to be on the market. And we save quite a lot. 40% is a small number. It's maybe 50% of CO2 emissions. So what would I suggest to the Russian market? First, you have to store it properly, that there is no oil spills. I think this is, meanwhile, not anymore a big problem, but it's very important. Okay. You have to analyze it. You should definitely avoid that used oil is blended into fuels and is burned in the small space heaters. And the legislation should prioritize regeneration. But the most important is that you collect proper data, that you know how much waste oil is on the market and how is the waste oil used. If you have this data, then you can come to good political decisions, and you can control these decisions. And then you will find the parts of the industry which are not in compliance. The industry itself, it must be reliable and transparent. You should promote altogether a clean and green image. The gray markets, what we have seen is one of the most problems. If you have numbers, you know where the gray markets are, and then you can dry them out. The regeneration technologies, of course, they have to comply with all the requirements of the modern lubricant standards. And in some countries, it helps the carbon credit scheme also for regenerated base oils, but I have not a particular know-how for Russia here. And the financial support, of course, to help the entrepreneurs, if there's a financial support, not for a lifetime. Lifetime always makes a market lazy. If it is a good in first, you get a good incentive, and is then diminishing within a period of some years to zero. I guess that's a very good system to encourage re-refining, and this system can be financed by state or by any EPR activities. Conclusion is already done. The driver in Europe was definitely that we live the legal framework, even if we are not that much obliged. We live it because we believe in it, and many did. It was invested a lot in new technology to overcome the stigma, the bad stigma of elder recycling. And with the quality put on the market, the 16% show that we are part of the market. So these are the key drivers for our industry, and I wish you very good luck to continue your work here in Russia and the neighboring countries, that we have a common world in regeneration, which we always can improve. Thank you very much.